Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Leadership Launchpad's Pick a Mix podcast. And today we are going overseas. We are international today with the great Joanna Povall. So, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Yeah. Well, we connected a little bit over LinkedIn because I was geeking out and, well, basically trying to learn some stuff about something called empathy mapping. And I was like, what is that about? And so I typed it in and I did my normal kind of look around the internet about who's talking. And my new favorite kind of AI thing is who are the key thinkers and writers in X? And then I go to that, and your name came up, and I was like, oh,
Oh
so
my goodness.
I now
Wow.
check you out, yeah. And so I put that in LinkedIn, and then before you know it, we're chatting, and then I was like, oh, I'd love to hear more about your story, and here we are. So tell the audience a bit about what your current role is.
Yeah, my current role is I am the principal of Wales International School in Abu Dhabi, which is a relatively small school by Abu Dhabi standards. We've got 1,400 children who are, yeah, that's small here. There are schools with 4,000.
Wow.
90% of our children are local Emirati children. And believe it or not, for a little school in the desert, we are named after Diana, Princess of Wales.
Oh, great. Oh, that's
Yeah.
exciting. Wow. Um, and then, so take us a bit of like way back. I mean, were you always in the UAE? What did you teach? All that sort of stuff.
No, I started off in the UK, so I'm a secondary religious studies teacher by trade. I miss it. I still miss teaching every day.
Yeah.
And then accidentally, I say, rose through the ranks from the first day. I was talking to somebody the other day, from the first day I started in teaching. I turned up in a school in Manchester and bright-eyed, bushy-tailed NQT, and they said, oh, by the way, you're the only specialist, you're the sole specialist in religious studies. We've got an English teacher, a history teacher, a geography teacher, maths teacher. They're all teaching RE.
Yeah.
You're in charge. You need to do the scheme of work because we haven't got one. You need to do all of the lesson plans and you give it to them. And I'm going, excuse, I thought I was turning up to a school where I was going to be told this is
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
you
Here's
do
your
it.
lesson plans. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just kind of accidentally fell into leadership and then went on from there. So I worked in Manchester in the UK, I worked in Sunderland in the northeast and Durham as well. Then as a family, we moved to France. I was in France for 15 years.
Wow.
And then 5.5 years ago, we moved to the UAE.
How exciting. Wow, well, I'm really looking forward to digging a bit deeper into all that sort of stuff. I mean, the thing that already strikes me is that idea that for lots of us, we were forced to lead, and then that probably brought out in us maybe some kind of innate abilities, or for me, it was sort of, you know, I didn't have a chance to I didn't have a chance to say no, so therefore I didn't have a chance to doubt myself because I had to
Yeah,
do it. And then before I knew it, I was actually reasonably good at it. And I thought, oh, and I kind of sidestepped the whole should I do it, should I not do it?
yeah. I'll be honest with you. In my first job, I did it for 2 years, and I was thinking, I'm not getting paid for this. This is ridiculous. I could get a job somewhere as a head of department and get a point for it. So I moved school, and then the rest is history.
Oh, how brilliant. Wow. So let's get started. And of course, if you're new to the podcast, basically we have a set of sort of, I guess, consistent structures that make up the flow of the podcast. And the guests, like Joanna, get to choose those ahead of time. And the first one we talk about is something called a fast friends question. And there are a series of questions, if you're not familiar with them, that they're designed to create connection between people by becoming almost increasingly vulnerable. And so the first one that you chose was, if you could wake up tomorrow having gained any one quality or ability, what would it be? So tell us about that.
It would be the quality of patience, because I have to be very honest with you. I'm not a very patient person. I have ADHD. I get very frustrated, and I'm not. I struggle to be kind when I'm feeling frustrated as a leader. And I think
Okay.
that the best advice that I was ever given was by a former head teacher of mine who once said to me, you need to remember that not everybody's like you.
All
And
right.
that was a really good piece of advice, because I get really frustrated because I'm
Yeah.
impatient, and I would say, we need to do this, so they could give it to me in 2 hours' time. And she would go, no, they can't do it in 2 hours. And I was like, yeah, you can. You just sit, you could do it in two. And she was like, no,
Yeah.
you can do it in 2 hours,
Yeah.
but this person is going to take about 3 days. And I'd be like, no, that doesn't take 3 days. And I was getting increasingly frustrated. And she
Yeah.
kept saying, not everybody's like you. Not everybody, and that was a really good piece of advice,
Yeah.
but I would say it's still something that I would really love, a magic wand that would just make me a more patient person.
Oh, that's brilliant. And again, I'm sure that resonates with lots of people, myself included. The thing that just sort of whizzed through my mind then as a reflection is I wonder whether things like that have an impact on our kind of comfort delegating. Because I sometimes, in that situation where I could give a job to somebody else, but I know that it would take a lot longer than me doing it myself, I just do it myself.
Absolutely, and I'm the same, and it's not good because then
It's not.
people aren't learning, and you're not delegating, like you say, and you put more pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
But again, it comes back to my lack of patience because I think I can either give it to this person to do, and then I'm going to get frustrated if they don't do it the way I want them to do it, or
Yeah.
it's going to take them too long. So I might as well just pick up the phone and do it myself, and that's not a good thing to do.
No. Um, I would imagine in your position, I mean, whether it's formally or informally, do you do any coaching?
And I'm actually at the moment with the International Centre for Coaching. I'm doing some training and coaching.
Oh,
I
great.
think I've probably been doing it unofficially
Right.
with a lot of people, but well, mix. Obviously, there's a difference between coaching and mentoring.
Yeah, sure.
But I do it a lot, and I think I've done it naturally rather than
Yeah.
understanding what it is. So it's been
Yeah.
really interesting to do it as a study to actually find out the mechanics and what it really is.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, that was exactly my journey. And when I did my kind of ILM7, I was suddenly like, oh, wow, there's a whole science behind this.
Yeah,
And that's fascinating. But the reason it came to me is, of course, I regularly talk to people who are on training as coaches and things like that. This idea between kind of a directive and a non-directive approach. But it makes me think that sometimes when I'm taking a non-directive approach and that other person is taking a really long time to get to an insight or a revelation that I've already come to in my head, I can hear myself going, come on, come, like, hello, is it not obvious? And I can feel it coming up. Like I'm going to say and almost give them the answer and I have to rein back that in. But whether that's a patience thing as well.
I think it was. I think we were separated at birth. I'm
Yeah,
exactly the same. Yeah,
that's so
exactly the
funny.
same. Yeah.
Separate. And we'll talk about this a bit later on, but you alluded to it then, and it's slightly ironic that you said you're not particularly kind, and yet what people don't know is that you've got a book coming out in March on kind leadership.
I do indeed. And in the book, I'm very honest about that. I've had to learn how to be kind because,
Right.
like I say, I get frustrated again, and I've had to learn that not everybody's like me.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, I think compassion goes a long way to make people feel more comfortable in work. I'll talk about it a little bit more when we talk
Yeah, that'd be
about
good.
the social norms. It's been a really interesting journey for me.
Wow.
Lots of ups and
Okay.
downs.
Brilliant. Right. Well, let's keep going then. So, the next bit of the podcast we usually do is something called an ignition point. And again, if you're new to the podcast, the idea is that we ask leaders about events or people or experiences that happened in their lives that have kind of made some sort of significant transition or transformation. And I only get the sort of the tagline. And so Joanna's written, "She's not capable." Wow. Tell us about that.
This was a major ignition point that led to me moving to the UAE, to be honest with you. And I had worked in the same school in France for, believe it or not, 15 and a half years. I thought you would have to take me out of that school in a box. They could even bury me in the forest behind the school because
Nice.
I lived, ate, and breathed school, probably if you ask my own children, to the detriment of them. If you ask my children, I've got two daughters, they're 32 and 26, and if you said to them, what did your mum do when you were younger? They'd go, work. She
Work.
was at
Yeah.
school. And if you said, what did she care about? It would be school. And if
Yeah.
you said, what about family? No, school came first. So I thought that was it. I was going to be at that school forever and I would retire there. And then it was an incident involving it. It was a privately owned school, and the
Right.
two owners of the school had had a meeting with the then headmaster who was retiring. And in this conversation, it was relayed back to me. He had said, they'd said to him, we'd actually like Joanna to take over from you when you retire.
Oh, okay.
And he said,
Oh no.
she's not capable.
Oh God.
Yeah. And obviously that was relayed back to me. And all I kept thinking was, I'm going to be very honest with
Go
you,
on, please do.
I've been running that school
Yeah.
this person was, I think being a deputy head vice principal is probably the worst
Oh,
job in a school, to be
it is
honest.
full on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, we had a figurehead who was out there schmoozing people. I
Yeah.
was running the school and I wasn't capable. And if I can have a very unkind moment, when I won, I said to get an International School Principal of the Year,
Yeah.
the first thing that went through my head was, and that's somebody who's not capable. But the
Exactly.
ignition point was, I'm not valued here.
Right.
I am not valued here. And I had a real loss of confidence from it. And then I thought, I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
And that's why we came to the UAE, and the rest is history. And
Wow.
when things like that happen, it's really traumatic. And you
Yeah.
think, what on earth's going to happen next?
Yeah.
It was the best thing that could have happened.
Absolutely. And did 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 the kind of, I mean, because in the confidence book that I wrote, we talk about these things called self-efficacy dips, or like confidence dips, and they naturally occur whenever you make a transition to a different role, or certainly in situations like that where you get some feedback which really dents it. How long did you stay in that dip for? Did you come back out of it before you applied for UAE, or did it happen when you got there?
No, it definitely happened when I got here. I would
Yeah.
say, without sounding like I'm exaggerating, because I'm really not, that point in my career was the worst time that I have ever had in my life. I
Wow.
think I probably came as close as I've ever come, not just because of that comment, but obviously that comment really didn't help.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've actually written about it in the book, that I think I probably came as close as I was ever going to come to having a total nervous breakdown. It
Wow.
was so stressful at that moment in time, and I totally lost my confidence. And it wasn't for probably coming here and re-establishing myself and thinking, actually, I think I am capable,
Yeah.
and really getting my confidence back. But it took a while.
Yeah, that's amazing. And again, lots of things firing in my mind. One being, how did you, for because I guess some people, they're naturally unconfident when they go for job interviews, but you must have been in that space already when you went for that interview for the UAE job. I mean, how did you summon up the.
I honestly don't know. Looking back, I think I was in a bit of a haze going through
Yeah,
the interview process, and it was a very strange time in my life. And like you say, when you talk about confidence, it was absolutely shot.
yeah. God, how fascinating. Brilliant. Well, let's get on to, like we just alluded to, our first launchpad. And for those, again, people that aren't familiar with the podcast sort of structure, we ask guests to pick kind of two images or infographics from the Leadership Launchpad books that resonate with them. And so I'll just talk through what I was thinking when I made this, and then we'll ask you why it resonates with you. So the first one that Joanna chose is called The Power of Pro-Social Norms. And a bit like lots of the launch pads, they originate because I don't understand words. So you can expect one coming on empathy mapping at some point. But I'll read something, and I will have seen that term, pro-social norms, and I think, oh, what's that? And then invariably I dig a little bit deeper, and I'm like, oh my goodness, that's fascinating. So when I was making this one, I was thinking that sort of the really great organizations sort of proactively embed what we might call rules of kindness, or things that people need to follow, and of course because they follow them, they become the norm. And so some of the ones that came up when I was doing some research were things like no blame. So the fact that you've created an organization where it's just the norm to not blame people, and in that sense, that means that staff feel safe to admit things, mistakes or uncertainty. And of course, we would now kind of badge that as psychological safety, wouldn't we? We would say that
Yeah.
people feel confident. They know that they're not going to get blamed for something. So therefore, they're happy to say, I've made a mistake, or I'm not quite sure about this. So the next one that came up was curiosity. I think this is something I continue almost to need to practice, is my ability in any given situation to have curiosity as my first response or instinct. And it's still not quite there yet. I tend to sort of jump into things when, if I just stopped and asked a question first as the norm, I'd probably get a little bit further, and I wouldn't have so much conflict at home, probably. So the next one is empowerment. I mean, again, we talked a little bit about this, didn't we? That as leaders, it's not counterintuitive, but we find it maybe hard for lots of reasons to give over power or responsibility. And in fact, if our norm was to empower others and to trust people, then that would be a nice thing to have. Shared credit came up. This idea that we're celebrating wins and contributions from lots of different people. This idea of volunteering, which I don't think it means that in the kind of the standard sense, but just the idea that you are always open to helping. You're always in your mind. It's just the norm that we support others and we share resources. I mean, I think I'm lucky enough, I'm sure you're the same, to be in educational networks that are full of what we would call professional generosity. You know, um, I know that I've got all kinds of people that I could contact just on WhatsApp or wherever and say, don't suppose you've ever got done this, or don't suppose you've got this resource. And there's a pro-social norm that we all just go, yeah, 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 here's this. Because kids are kids, aren't they? And we're all just trying to help the sector. This links a bit with curiosity, I suppose. But if our default was active listening, then we'd probably have a lot more accuracy in the way we diagnose kind of problems and stuff like that. Sharing goes with, I suppose, with the volunteering. And then effectively it ended with me thinking, okay, well, what do these norms, if you can get them embedded in your organization, help you do? Well, the theory would suggest that you get an increased level of engagement from staff. The fact that you've created almost like a nice place to be means that you get more retention. There's naturally more collaboration because people are kind of curious and volunteering and sharing and all that sort of stuff. And then if you put all those together, you would probably naturally get an improvement in performance. So that was kind of what I was thinking when I made it. But why did it resonate with you?
I think it's because it very much links with the book that I've just written, and
Yeah.
absolutely everything that's in there is covered within the book, plus some extra things as well. And what I did was I wanted to create something that people could actually use as a framework to
Right.
understand what kindness is, because I think people, they often misunderstand kindness.
Yeah.
And I did a session, and I'm doing one again next week, and I called it "Don't Mistake My Kindness for Weakness," which is a quote
Okay.
by Al Capone.
Is
And
it
what he said,
really?
yeah, he
Wow.
said, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness. I'm kind to everybody, but if you're not kind to me, weakness is not what you're going to remember." And it fascinated me, because I just think when we think of Al Capone, we think
Yeah.
gangster, tax evasion, prison, killing people, but
Yeah.
actually he was a really kind person.
Right.
And he gave money to soup kitchens if people were in need in the Great Depression. He really, really looked after
Wow.
people. He was apparently a kind person. And what I wanted to do was think of a way to show people that kindness works, and everything that you've put on the bottom about engagement, retention, collaboration, performance. If you can get a kind place within your organisation, those things happen.
Yeah.
So I was driving along one day and I was thinking about, communication. It's nothing new, it's all things that we already know. And I was thinking, Simon Sinek says that we can chase happiness. Then I
Right.
thought, hold on a minute, if you can chase happiness, you can chase kindness. And I
Yeah.
thought everything that I was thinking about fits into that acronym. And I think I'm still a teacher at heart. I try
Of
to
course.
find easy ways for people to remember things. I think I'm dealing with a GCSE class here. So I
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
what do we need? And I thought, C, communication, but with kindness.
Yeah.
H, honesty. A, accountability.
Yeah.
S, I originally said shame, and then the publisher said change that word to self-esteem. And E,
Okay.
ego. And I
Wow.
thought, if we can get that right as leaders,
Yeah.
that kindness falls into place. And I think accountability is an interesting one in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Folkman for, it really ties in with what you put about the pro-social norms. There's a study done by Folkman in Forbes magazine,
Right.
and it looked at organisations. It wasn't schools, it was industry, and they said organisations that had low kindness and low accountability, the workforce were utterly miserable and wouldn't
Right.
go above and beyond, which goes to your volunteering. So it
Yeah.
was literally, I clock in at 9 o'clock, I clock in at 5 o'clock, don't ask
Yeah.
me to do any extra. I'm going to sit down in my lunch break and I'm not going to move. But if you had an organisation that had high accountability and high kindness, people were really happy in the workplace. Staff morale was really high, and they would go above and beyond. And I
Yeah.
thought that was absolutely fascinating.
Oh my God, that is fascinating. One of the things that you said really early on in the podcast, it stuck with me, and you probably didn't even notice you said it, but you said something like, "I'm learning to be kind," and
Mm,
that probably is. I mean, that's fascinating, and it's such a nice way to think that there are, what we might call soft skills, but they do need to be learnt. Do you know what I mean? You're not
absolutely.
maybe you're well. There's two things in there. There's something about you're not guaranteed these innate qualities like kindness, so therefore, but also if you were to really honestly self-reflect and say, I'm not sure I'm as kind as I could be, then there's some positivity in the fact that you can learn to do it. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think developing the framework helps me it's exactly that, reflecting. We all know there's nothing new. We all know you need to communicate kindly and with
Yeah,
clarity. We all know that you need to be honest, you need to hold people accountable. We know you need to raise people's self esteem and mind your ego.
yeah,
Everybody knows that, but it's reflecting on it.
yeah,
And, at the end of the day, I literally sit and do an ego check and I go, right, I made that decision today. Was it in the best interest of the school or the person
right.
that I was dealing with, or was it for me? And like you say, pausing. If I can feel that I'm not happy, I'll quite often say to my staff, and they know I do it. So we'll have a meeting and I'll say, right, okay, stop. I need to sleep on it. And that's my way of making sure that I'm making the right decision through kindness,
Yeah,
because I might jump on something or they might have said something that maybe irritated me a little bit. So I can
yeah,
stop and go, do you know what? I just need to sleep on it. And I
yeah,
think, did I communicate that correctly? Was it clear what I wanted to do? Was I honest?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
this going to have implications for people's self esteem, or is it my ego? And it really helps me to keep things in check.
That is that is that is so interesting. The thing that struck me then was this idea that, and again, it's so fundamental, isn't it? I wonder if, and you'll be able to tell me, I'm sure. I wonder if there is naturally we are kinder when we take longer to think about stuff. Is that?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to what we were saying about patience as well. So
Yes.
because I'm impatient and I want to make a decision quickly,
Sometimes we're
sometimes I
not
make a
kind.
decision and I make a mistake and it's not
Yeah.
kind.
I'm, I'm writing a book at the moment about self mastery. This idea that really you got to get your own house in order before
Absolutely.
anything else. And I kept writing lots and lots of the chapters. There's this link between just putting more space between stimulus and response, just pausing, stopping, taking a breath, all that
Mm.
stuff. And
Yeah.
it does feel quite fundamental that if you can do that, then yeah, you're usually kind of better off.
But again, that's been practice. So I was wicked for, as you'll know, working in schools. I'll be running down the corridor to deal with something,
Yeah,
and somebody goes, "Can I just have a word with you?" And they stop you in the corridor and go, "I just need to ask you." And I either make a decision too quickly, or,
yeah,
what day are we going to do the healthy eating day, on Wednesday or Thursday? And I go, "Oh, Thursday." Then I get back to my office and realise we've got something else on Thursday and we can't do it, so I shouldn't have said that.
yeah,
Or they want to talk about something that we really shouldn't be talking about in a corridor. And
yeah,
I've really had to learn to say, or the other thing is, because I've got ADHD, I'll run down the corridor and I've immediately forgotten what they've said. And then they get annoyed with me because they're going, I asked her that question and she said she'd get back to me and she didn't.
yeah,
So now I've learned to say, can I stop you there? Can we please make an appointment to discuss this properly? I don't want to
yeah.
talk about it in the corridor. But
No,
that again took practice.
oh, brilliant. And I've had a similar experience, and actually, you might think that you're fobbing them off, but what you are communicating is this is really important. I
Yeah,
want to give you the time for it.
absolutely.
Brilliant. Well, let's keep moving on. So we're on to our second ignition point, which is a captivating title. This one, it says, "You don't take after your father, do you?" Tell us about that.
This was my year seven art teacher who
Right.
transformed my life in two ways.
Okay.
So, my dad is an artist, he's retired now. And when I was little, all I wanted to be was an artist.
Of
That
course.
was all I wanted to be, even in primary. if in my maths book, I would do little cartoons in the corner, and I
Okay.
thought I was the world's best artist.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the first week of school, so I'd gone to a small village primary, first week of secondary school, year 7. I'm sure everybody had to do this. We had to get a shoe and put it on on the table. I don't know if you had to do that when you were at school. Yeah, so it was a trainer from PE. I put it on the table, and this was going to be my favourite subject because
Yeah.
I wanted to be an artist,
Yeah.
and I drew what I thought was the world's best training shoe. And the teacher came up behind me and he said, "Oh, that's an unusual surname." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." And he said, "Dad, no, it's not called Wilf, is it?" And I went, "Yeah, why?" And he went, "Oh my goodness, I know your dad. I know his work. He must have gone to university, to art college with Ridley Scott because they were the same age. And this gentleman used to teach at the art college." And he said, "He must know." And I was going, "Yeah, yeah." Well, of course, all my new friends, and talk about ego, all of my new friends were going, "Oh, wow, Joanna's
Check,
dad."
yeah.
And it was the era of, Alien, and everyone was like, Joanna's dad went to art college and Ridley Scott went. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he looked over at my work and he
Oh
said,
no.
"You don't take after your father, do you?"
God.
And I put my pencil down and I promise you, I never drew again.
You're
I
kidding.
don't know if I can draw. I just went, "I'm rubbish."
Oh
I put my
no.
pencil down, and even now, I'm 53 years old, and if I draw on the board for the kids, they start laughing because I'll do little stick men, and they go, that's really funny," and I'm just like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I can't draw. I don't know if I can draw or not." So that changed the trajectory of my life because I thought I was going to do art, and that was my big thing, and it wasn't. So obviously, I changed direction in that sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I still think of it now when I'm dealing with people. The words that you use with
Yeah.
human beings have a massive impact on them. And he probably didn't even realise. He might
No.
have even thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I don't know what his motivation was, but that really hurt me. And it makes me a lot more conscious now of, even when you're cracking a joke,
Yeah.
just be careful how you deal with people because it can be hurtful.
Yeah. Well, that links a little bit, doesn't it, to your idea at the beginning, this idea that not everybody's like you, you know?
Yeah.
Just because you think it's funny, just because you think it's appropriate, doesn't guarantee that the people on the other end feel that way.
Absolutely. And culturally, working in international
Oh, of
schools or
course, yeah.
even working in the UK, you don't know that something that's funny in British humour, it's quite often a problem, not a problem, that's too strong a word maybe. We have issues sometimes
Yeah.
because we have Emirati young children. British humour's sarcastic.
Yeah,
These
yeah.
children have English as an additional
Of
language.
course.
Teachers sometimes crack a joke with the kids being sarcastic about something,
Yeah.
and I get a parent coming in absolutely on the ceiling going, "This teacher said this," and I'm like, "No, no, no, that's British humour. They don't mean
Right.
that." And
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah, God. And it makes me think again back to this theme that we've got going, this idea of patience and curiosity. You know, we now know, don't we? And it's becoming more common for people to hear and to see that idea that you don't know what's going on for the other person. You know, and I think
Absolutely.
in leadership, I mean, again, we talk about this, don't we? Like when I was a teacher, I knew my kids inside out,
Yeah.
and I knew them beyond their data as well, or any labels that someone had given them. I knew their likes, their dislikes, hobbies, interests, their favorite ice cream flavor, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't notice it when I first stepped into leadership, but I do recognize it now that I don't think I made as much effort to know my staff as I did my students,
I
which
think
was
I'm probably
interesting.
guilty of that too.
Yeah, whether there's a busyness, but the thing that made me think of it is like, again, if one of our pro-social norms was curiosity and we were patient and we asked a question as the initial thing, let's take your art situation. If that teacher had said, "Oh, are you thinking of being an artist yourself, Joanna?" And you had said, "Yeah, it's my life's desire to be just like my dad," that might have stopped that person saying, "Well, that's never going to happen."
Yeah.
God, yeah,
Yeah, it's
fascinating.
interesting. I've got another thing that I was thinking. You've just sparked something in me.
Go
Sorry if
for
you
it,
don't
yeah.
mind me sharing. I remember having a conversation when I was working in France, and I'm an early bird. I get to school
Right.
at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
I've always been an early person. and there was a colleague of mine, married, two small children. He was a teacher, wife was a teacher in a different school. He took the morning to come into school. She took the kids to school, but
Right.
straight after school, he picked them up and she stayed at work late.
Right.
So school started at 8:45. He would come in at 6 o'clock in the morning, plan all of his lessons, make sure his books were marked, get ready for the day, while his wife got the kids breakfast and took them to school.
Yeah.
But then at 3:30, when the bell went, he grabbed his, but he sometimes walked out with carrier bags full of books, but he
Right.
was straight in the car because he had to go and pick the kids up.
Yeah.
And I remember my boss saying one day, "Oh, no, he's the first one out the door every day."
Oh
And I
no.
said, "But he's also the first one in the door. He's
Yes.
walking in the same time as me." And I said, "You come to school 15 minutes before school starts. And yes, you stay later,
Sure.
but because you're not seeing," I thought it's really interesting the judgments that we make
Yeah.
about people. So he was going, "Oh, lazy, first one
Yeah. Of
out the
course.
door." And I'm going, "No, you don't know what's going on in his life. He's the
No.
first one in the door because his wife looks after the kids in the morning, but he
Yeah.
needs to leave because he's got to go and pick them up."
Brilliant.
It's just interesting,
It's
like you're
another
saying,
great example. Yeah. It really is. And again, a simple question. Hey,
yeah,
Joanna, do you know anything about like Mike's life? I do. Yeah. In early, outer. Ah, that
yeah.
explains it. And it all goes away. Well,
And
there you
not
go.
everybody's like you. He was a
That's
morning
right. Yeah.
person. You
Exactly.
didn't want to come into work until 15 minutes before school started. So,
I think that's really, yeah. God, that's so good. All right, well, let's keep pushing on then. So, the next thing we're going to do is do our second launch pad. So, again, for those that are watching on the video, I'll just get that up on the screen. So, the second one that Joanna chose is called Building Better Networks. And I guess if you work in schools, you work in teams. And when I say teams, lots of different teams. You'll be in an academic team, a pastoral team. You are in the team, which is the school. You might even be in a wider network with other schools. And of course, in the UK now, multi-academy trusts are, the way that we organise schools. And so I work with, I lead kind of teaching and learning and PD across 36 schools in my trust. And so I'm involved in lots of networks, and I also kind of co-run we have a trust-wide CPD network that me, Sam Gibbs, and Tracy Goodyear set up. And again, there's 180 UK trusts in that. So I was a member of lots of networks, and then I tripped over this phrase. Someone said, someone I was reading, that effective networking is much more than just getting people together. And I thought, wow, that feels kind of it creates a bit of friction, because I was thinking back at some of the networks that I've set up, and I was wondering, are they, are they good networks? And I thought, I didn't really understand. I don't know if I've got a credible way of evaluating whether there's a good network or not. I mean, they come together, we have a nice time, and is that enough? And I tripped over something called the TACIT kind of model of sort of networks, and they basically started talking about this idea that at the very basic level, you've got this idea that for any network to be minimally successful, it's got to have a purpose. So if you've pulled some people together without a purpose, you don't even have a network. But at that point, if they've got a purpose and they're there to support each other, then great. And I thought, oh, okay, yeah, mine does that. But the framework goes on into a bit more detail, because it suggests that there's some other things that take networks to an even better level. The first one being challenge. And it links back to what we talked about in terms of psychological safety. If you've got a network where you've got high levels of that and people feel comfortable challenging each other's either perceptions or thoughts or ideas, then you can take the network to a whole nother level. And then the last one, of course, is collaboration. And when we say collaboration, it's different from support in that they are working together to create something better than they could do on their own. So it's a step up from just, I don't know, sharing a resource or something like that. So then I was thinking, oh, well, I've got some networks that I'm in that do that, but there's some other networks that are a bit further back. And then, of course, I went to the furthest extreme of the sort of the model, and in this bit, they talk about that the level even above that is this idea that people are learning from the network. They're not just putting into it, they are genuinely getting better at whatever it is because of the network. But also, they talked about this idea of creation in this sense that things are being created by the network that are then used by the network and ideally used at a much larger scale. Something like the network is sort of feeding back into it. And so I guess the output of that would be an impact. And I suppose we want that from everything, but that's where my thinking stopped, to go back to the networks I'm in and think, okay, does that network have a tangible impact on the thing that it's supposed to do? The rest of it's just kind of text for anyone who's watching, so you can read that yourself. But that was what I was thinking when I made that. Why did it resonate with you, Joanna?
It resonated with me because I think we are very similar people, and I'm from the northeast of England. And there's a saying where I come from: "Shy bairns getting out." So I'm not frightened to pick up the phone, and I'm never afraid to reach out to people. But I think as schools, the reason why it resonated with me is we don't do this enough.
Right.
And I think, particularly in the international school circuit, I haven't been in the UK for a long time. You'll be able to tell me much better. It's not a competition.
Right.
We're all in it together to do the best we can possibly do for our children. And if you've got something that works in your school, share.
Yeah.
The door to my school is genuinely open. I keep saying to everybody, to my teachers, go out, go and see what's happening in other schools. And I say to people, come and see what's happening in our school. We're not perfect, but just come and see what we're doing well. I do accreditation visits for COBIS, the Council of British International Schools.
Yeah.
It brings so much joy to my life because I walk around schools and I learn a lot, and it's positive in two senses. In that, I'm looking and going, that's a really great idea. We could use that in our school.
Yeah.
And sometimes it actually validates me because I'm going, actually, we're doing a better job than this.
Yeah.
And then the next steps I can say, have you ever thought about doing this? So it's real, genuine school improvement. And I think as schools, we've kind of got networks, but we haven't really got networks. And I still think there's this. I mean, you'll be able to tell me better in your, multi-academy trusts.
Yeah.
It's very much, this is what we do in our trust. And we don't want others to know because then they might do it better than us.
Sure.
So what?
Yeah.
So what? Maybe they can share the impact back with you and say, we tried this, but that didn't work, so we've done this differently, and learn and create, and then it's going to have an impact for everybody. And at the end of the day, I'm in it for the kids. And if it has an impact on any child anywhere in the world, then that's a really positive thing.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. So many things flying through my head. I mean, something that I've said before on the podcast, probably because it sticks in my mind. Because when I did my doctorate, afterwards my mum was like, "Oh, what did you find out?" And she used to work in a post office, not an academic background. So I told her, and she knew that it was 5 years and it cost me like 15,000 of personal money. And so I said to her, I found out that the leaders are most confident in the things they do most often. And she went, all right, yeah, well done. And I was like, yeah, it's a bit, it's not exactly groundbreaking. And she then said something like, well, isn't that just common sense? And I thought,
No,
well, probably not. I mean, it was common sense, but it's not common practice was the thing that I
yes,
started coming up with.
absolutely.
And it dawns on me that that's similar, isn't it? You'll have people who are listening to this podcast who say, well, of course, going out and seeing other things is useful. Well, yeah, that's common sense, but how common practice is it? If you're not a leader, you need to speak to your leaders and say, can I go and do this? If you're a leader, you need to be creating opportunities for your staff to go out and do that. Because like you said, I've never felt more alive than going out and seeing other people's stuff. And I don't think there's a single time that I've been asked to go and share something that I didn't come back with something.
Absolutely.
it's so reciprocal. Sometimes people book me for keynotes and stuff, and then they say, "Oh, we only need you for the time that you're going to be there." And I say, "Well, could I stay for the whole day?" And they say, yeah, if you but we can only pay you." I said, "Oh, I'm here to learn." Like, I'm here to contribute, but I also want to kind of take something away. So that's really interesting. And like you said, if you put kids at the center of all this, then yeah, let's just share, share, share. Brilliant. Well, we've come to the final kind of fast friends question, and the one that you chose says, "Is there something that you've dreamed of doing for a long time, and why haven't you done it?"
You've just touched on it because you've
Oh,
already done it.
really?
I have dreamt of doing a PhD for a
Boom, got
long
it.
time, and I've never got round to doing it. Partly there've been times financially because it's a very expensive thing to
Yeah,
do, then it's time, then it's something that I'd really, really like to do.
brilliant. Wow. I mean, it's for me. It's one of those things that you got to keep it on your bucket list. And you've got to kind of. There's no real reason why time or age is going to be a thing. Like when I was sometimes daydream. I mean, I'm a bit. I'm not. I'm quite a way off retirement, but I sometimes daydream about what I'm going to do because I similar to you, recently diagnosed kind of ADHD, and I sometimes think I'm not going to be able to sit still. And
Me
so
too.
actually, I'm thinking, well, I'll just write books and things like that. But also, there's so much benefit, I would imagine, I don't know the science of it, of staying cognitively active in your later life. Um, so that'll guarantee what would you sort of do it on, do you think?
Oh, I've got an idea in my head.
Go on, tell
It's
us.
PhD. I could have written it in a book, but I just
Right.
thought, I'm
We'll
saving this
save
for my
that. Save it.
PhD. The ego of the head teacher.
Oh, I like it.
And I think there are different types of head teacher
Right.
that you could almost, you've got the figurehead, the kissing baby presidential head
Yeah,
teacher. You've got the very hands, you know what I mean.
I
Um,
do.
yeah, I think a lot of listeners will go, "Oh, I worked for one of them." People who are very hands-on, people who are very hands-off, but at the heart of it, it is ego, and my husband calls it Mugabe syndrome.
Oh,
It's
right.
really dangerous when you
Yeah.
are in that position because everybody wants something from you, so they become a bit sycophantic.
Right.
And you have to be really careful as a head teacher because you've got the parents want something from you, so they're telling you that you're all things wonderful. The
Yeah.
staff want you to give them a pay rise, so they're telling you that you're wonderful. The kids are just gorgeous and they're going, "I love you, Miss Joanna."
Yeah.
And my husband always says, just keep yourself in check because everybody's going, "Oh, you're wonderful, you're wonderful." They don't really think that. It's because they want
Uh,
something. It's a real area of interest of mine, the different types of head teacher that you have and
yeah.
how much ego plays in that.
Oh my god! Well, I will definitely be a viewer of that. And it's funny because before we came on air, we were both sort of sharing how we probably are a little bit insecure, even still,
Yeah.
and I think that makes us more susceptible. It certainly makes me more susceptible to praise and validation. It's like, I'm kind of like soaking it up and then breathing it like air almost. And then you go searching for it, don't you? Like, how can I validate? How can I validate? This episode won't come out for a few months, but it's made me laugh because today, what's that? The 13th. Today's episode of the podcast is the 50th episode, and a friend of mine, Shane Leaning, about 20 episodes ago, said, "Oh, I'd be interested in what your answers to these questions would be, Chris."
Oh,
Of course, all I heard was, "Talk about me? Oh, oh, okay." And so before I knew it, I had Sam Gibbs and Tracy interviewing me for the thing. And so I made well, maybe. I mean, I put the joke on LinkedIn today about how slight ego trip, but hey, here we are. So tell the listeners how they can kind of connect with you and your work, and tell us a little bit about when the book's going to come out.
yeah. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. It's just Joanna Povall. That's Povall. My maiden name was bad, but this one's even worse. Feel free to link it anytime. The book is by Crown House Publishing Group, and it's going to be published, like you say, in March. Tentative date at the moment, midway through March. It's been a long time coming, as you know. It takes a very long time to write a book, and writing it was the easy part, then going through all of the editing, so we've been waiting for that. But you can pre-order on Amazon or go on Crown House. But please feel free to get in touch. I love learning, and I think it's really good to connect with people and network around the world to help each other, because we need to make the world a better place.
Amazing. Well, that's a perfect place to stop. So, yeah, thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Joanna for coming on, and we'll see you at the next one.